There we go. Okay. Looks like we are. Are you ready? Yes.
All right. Jeg sang kaffe, så kunne
No, yeah.
So imagine today, no, well, not today. Tomorrow they open the laptop and they see the same pictures, like so personal. I think that makes
Vil jeg se, der står sådan et eller andet, en eller anden pumpe eller sådan noget. Ja. Start med den. Right. I don't know how if you checked the GitHub lesson plan today, but a lot of it seems like stuff you already learned, like creating a React project and so on. So I guess today will just be a good chance for us to take what we learned last time and get really strong in those concepts, right? So maybe we could start talking about the homework that you guys did for this class, or from last class. It seemed like there was a lot of misunderstanding, or not misunderstanding, but there was a lot of different ideas of what it meant to do a what was the wording?
Static?
Yeah, like a static to-do list, right? So some people made it like a, you know.
Can you read this, or should it be?
I can I make it bigger?
Yeah, Command plus.
Oh, yeah. All right, that's good. Some people did like a, you know, an H1 to do one, and so on, and some people made it like an array, and then did the
one bigger.
one bigger. Like this.
Or you have to come. Can you come close?
Let me see from your perspective. Is it that bad?
You might need glasses.
Yeah. So some people made like a to-do like this. Right. And some people, some of you made it like an array and then went through the whole components, like component building with a to-do component and a to-do item component, and printed out your to-dos and your within your to-do item component. Of course, as you get further with React, that's the way to do it, is to make your components as adaptive as possible, so that whichever amount of to-dos you have, you will be able to react to them, right? That's why it's called React, because you can react to different kind of states, different kind of props, so on and so forth. But because the wording of the homework was so general and confusing, whichever way you did it, it was fine. I didn't see any of you not understanding the way to render items and build components and so on and so forth. So it was good So good job, guys. But for the next homework, be sure to go through the whole components tree. So figure out which components you need and try to make them as adaptive and reactive as possible to the data that you give them, the props that you give them, right?
Because
Yeah.
in homework it says that we have to use more than 2 components.
Yeah.
So the first one means it's net.
Yeah.
The second one is what it's header, and the third one our list or our.
Yeah, again, the wording is kind of weird, right? Because we can always discuss what they mean with the component. Do they mean the app is a component, right? Do they mean the main is a component, so on and so forth. I mean, I think I've checked all of you guys' homework so far, and it looked fine. But next time, if they say use 2 or 3 components, I'd say that the component that you make is a component you make yourself, right? So don't include the app and the main, just include whichever you choose to expand the project with. Also, if you want, you can choose to just like delete everything from this app.jsx and just start forward and make that your component. That's up to you. Yeah. Did any of you have any other questions about the homework? No, it's good. Cool. So
Oh,
Yeah.
I have a question about export. Sometimes we write in just export one function, or we write in the end of the file, export the whole file.
Yeah.
So when should we use like export one function when the whole file?
that's like a very political programmer question. I'll give you guys my answer, and then while I do that, don't look at Thomas because he might not agree with me. But for me, I'd always say export default means that that's the default value that you export from this file, right? So when you export something default, that's the difference about having to put it within these brackets and just be able to import it like this. So usually what I do is when I have a file, I will, if I only have one function that I need to export, I'll just export that as my default. You can do it before the function. You can also do it at the bottom like this. That's totally up to you. Both things are correct. Like this, right? This is totally up to you. And if you have a file with multiple functions, say you have a file where you keep a lot of functions that you use throughout your app, then you can just use export. Can't you? Yeah, you can just use export because then you can have multiple functions within the same folder or just file. Sorry.
What would I understand is, suppose we are creating the form, let's say to do app, and there we need a delete function and we need a submit, like add to do and delete to do.
Yeah.
So what could I understand is, like, if I'm writing add and delete, put the function in one file and using them into 2 different files, then
Yeah.
I would like I would export them as function.
Yeah, usually it kind of depends how you build your app, your React project, right? So say that I have a function I only need to use for like this one component. For example, this component I have this function called getState, and I only need to use this function for the app component, so I don't need to export it. If you have functions, say I have a function that takes a user and does something to the user to make it more readable, that I need on multiple components. Usually what I do is I wouldn't put it within a component, I put it within a separate folder or separate file where I keep functions that I use throughout my project. But it's
Yeah. But also, from what I understand from your question, there's no functional difference between default export or named export. If they work the same, you can import them as many times as you want. Why I would advertise for named exports is that the only technical difference that you're having between these two is that with a default export, you're determining, or you're, how should I say, you're choosing the name when you import the thing. With a named export, you're choosing the name when you're exporting it. And that makes it a lot easier to replace it later. So let's say you have a component for a button in a project and you name it as an export. You say export function button. Then everywhere where you use this button, it has to be import button from button. But what happens usually in big projects with people is that they make typos. And when you choose the name when you import, then people will write things like import btn from button or import my button from button. And then later, if you do a search and replace in your project, you're going to be missing all of these instances of the button that people have named in a weird different way. But it's an edge case, so you can use both, like whatever you prefer.
It's like there is no better way. It's like both are good. It all depends on the, let's say, it's all depend on the personal choice.
Yes.
I think also one thing that you're gonna see once you start working in different companies, right, is that usually a company has their way of doing it. So for example, in my company, we don't use React, but we use React Native. And we have our special way of building our files, you know, like all the little things you do, all the little choices you make is usually dependent on the syntax that your company chooses to implement. So it also very much depends on who you are, which team you're part of.
Yeah, and also expect this to change over time. Like
Yeah.
when we started in 2015 with React, everybody made these folders with like index TSX, and then they were exporting all of the components and then importing them again because you have these weird things with bundles and stuff like that. And then you had 1 million index TSX JSX files in your repository, and you never knew which one was which. And so at some point people stopped doing that for some reason. So we changed, and we don't do that anymore. We don't do this index export import anymore. So yeah, maybe you saw this in Node.js. Maybe you did it there. I'm not sure. Where you would have a folder and you would have multiple files, and then you would have an index file in the folder where you imported from all the files and then exported as one big export, so that you would only need to import from this one file, which never really made sense to me, but yeah, we did that because it was a convention and everyone did that. So, yeah, expect these things to change over time. Sorry for the detour.
No, it's good. Okay. So the first thing that I think we should talk about today is the life cycle of a component, right? So when we render new components, how does it render? When does it stop rendering? And when does it render throughout the life cycle of this component, right? So maybe you guys have read something about the hook called useState. Yeah. Yeah, sorry, useEffect, sorry. Thank you. So useEffect is a component that you can use, or a hook that you can use, kind of like you use useState, right? So it's something React gives you to just use. So what I have here is I just made a like a tiny example of how to use this use effect, right? And I'm just going to import this in my yeah, I need to run my on. What? Oh yeah. There we go. Oh yeah, Pandev. There we go. Let me see. Well, this is going wrong. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Wrong file. Okay, there we go. So I have my console open out here, and as you see, I made this a use effects hook, and use effects as a default, as it is here, is just a function that runs every time your component renders and re-renders, right? So already now, when we ran this application, you can see it says re-rendering twice, right? So as soon as you mount a component, you'll run a render of your component, which makes sense, right? And when you have a state change, so I made a button that increases a number, which doesn't work. Oh yeah, is that a TypeScript thing? Or?
No, it's because modifies the.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I think now you need to turn this up.
Yeah, so when I change the state, I'll also have a render, right? So every time I increase the number, it re-renders my component. And that's how use effect works in this form. Every time you change your state, every time you change your props, every time something changes within your component, a value changes within your component, it'll run a re-render, right? But usually when we use this use effect, we don't want to just have it run every time we do a re-render. So what makes use effect smart is that we can give it a variable, something to look for within our app, and only to run when this value changes, right? So in my example, I have number. So I'll give number as a second value to use effect. And the reason that's scenario is because if you have multiple values you want to react to, you can also do that here, right? But now I just want to only want to look at number. And so if I do my component here, whenever number changes, I'll have a re-render. But if I choose to add another state, so now I have two states in my component, right? And because I've told my use effect to only react to the state called number, when I increase this state, my use effect doesn't run, right? Let's just show that even though use effect is not running, it's still doing a re-render. You see here, right? I mount my component, it's rendering. When I increase number, it does a re-render because I told my use effect to only react to number. When I increase this, it doesn't run, even though I'm still doing a re-render because I've only told my use state to react to this value. The reason that we would like to use effect is because often as us building React components, we might have some functions that are quite slow, right? So I've made this function up here called slow function. This is just an imitation. Usually it would be like an API call, which doesn't happen as quickly as your component mounts. So it's something you want to react to later on. And maybe something you want to react to in only specific cases so that you're not constantly pinging an API. So I don't want to do this. But do I actually want to do this? No, sorry, I'm rambling. Yeah, sorry, I'm rambling. Let's say I have an API call. Let's say my number is not just a number. Let's say it's a list of users that I get from an API. And when I increase this number, I change a value. So for example, I say now I want this amount of numbers or of users, or I want users only with this specific name or from this specific group, right? And usually that would be like an async call, right? Because it doesn't happen instantly. You ping the server, and then when the server finds your data, it will send it back to you. So often you want to be able to react to this. So so when your value changes, you use effect to then change your state. And I think it will be easier if I try to make an example of it. Yeah.
You have those two states, one for number and the other for other state.
Sorry.
I can see that there are two states.
Yeah.
For number and the other state. What you can use is that to include all. Like, yeah, in use effects.
Yeah.
Now you include only.
Yeah.
What if you include other states? How does it tell which is?
Yeah. So I'll try to make just until I log in. So this is an array, so I can also choose to put other state here, right? And when I have both of these values within my use effect, it'll react to both of them. But use effect doesn't tell you which of these two states change. It just tells you that one of them changed. Something happened within your array of values, right?
We have two effects in one component.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can have as many as we want, right?
Each one will have its dependencies on the effect.
Yeah. So let's say we want a use effect that reacts to number. We want one that reacts to this state. And we want a use effect that just reacts to anything.
The usual use. Synchronous or asynchronous?
Actually, you can make a use effect asynchronous. Like if I write async here, it'll give me an error usually, right? Maybe when I run it. So it's not really to react to asynchronous inside the use effect. But let's say that I have something out here, which is
something changed. When I click the button, I will fetch data. The data is not here yet.
yeah.
Is it changing or to wait the data?
It will. Let's say that you have some data here which is asynchronous, right? We usually do this. So, for example, you might have a class that gets something from your Node server. That's certainly something that you will run into. And this data is not there instantly. So we can choose to react to when that data changes, right? So if I have something called, and yeah, we don't know what this is, but some kind of data that's not there instantly. We can make a use effect that reacts to this value, and as soon as that changes, then we can start setting a state and so on and so forth, right? So that's usually how we use it as programmers. That's correct. But just to show you guys, I made 3 use effects now, which is totally fine. One of them reacts to number, one of them reacts to other state, and one of them just reacts to anything. So I get a lot of logs, right? When I increase this number, I get number changes and something happened. So the use effect that reacts to number runs its function, and the use effect that reacts to anything runs its function. Same thing goes for something else. So you can have as many use effects as you want. And if you wanted to react to multiple values, you can also add values in here. So now this use effect just reacts to anything, any of these two values, right? But yeah, as you were talking about, usually we try to use effect as carefully as possible, because there's a lot of React hooks, and often use effect is kind of used in a wrong way where you could have used something else. So the way I usually use it is at my work, we have whenever we have a new component, we might get some data. It might be data about some products that we sell, that we have in our database, right? And whenever we make a component and we try to fetch this data, it's not that instant. So we'll just declare it in our component. And then we will render our component and try to react to whether or not the data is there. So if it's not there, we'll do like a loading screen or something like this. And then we have a use effect that reacts to this async data. So as soon as it's there, we can set a state, we can process it the way we need to process it, and then we can render our component.
Maybe you can show us short example this time in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Let's see if what could I do? Maybe the best thing to do would be to, while you guys are doing an exercise, I could try to find some kind of API to use, and then I can show you afterwards. Yeah, I think that might be the best way to do that. So while you guys are doing an exercise, at some point I'll try to find an API, and then once we start up again, I'll do an example with the correct use of use effect with an API call or a server call or something like this.
Any quantity of conditions, number, other states, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Can we use this? For example, search bar and show products with daily products.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, you could. Let's say that you have if it's just an like a static amount of data, right? So when you make your homework, you had like an array with values in them, and React will always know those values. So if it's that case, then it's easier to just make like a function and run them through and set your states. But if it's an API call, then yeah, certainly you could use it for a filter. So if you have to change your call as a value changes, then use effect would be a perfect solution to use there.
Yeah, I think I'm here to come with the unpopular opinions left on the side because usually you don't need use effect.
Yeah.
99% of the time, people overuse use effect because you probably don't need. You can just write in your function, like in your component body, data equals other data dot filter. You don't need to use an effect for that. It's not that expensive that you can't do it on every render. But you will see a lot of examples online that grab these things and use effects. They will work, but they are also harder to debug.
Yeah.
So So
So you will like create a state with this process, yeah, and then we put this state and change the positive reactions.
yeah, I can also show you.
All right, but later on, I think we'll try to make some examples with some API calls so you can get an idea of how we would usually use it in a production setting. Something else. Last time we talked about use state. I can see some of you use it in your homework, but maybe we can just go over it a bit again just to give you a little bit of a further idea of use state. So I've made another function. I've made a lot of functions. I've made this use state example, right? So one thing I want to show you about use state is that there are multiple ways you can choose to set your state. There are multiple ways you can choose to set your state. So I've made this very, very slow function. And as you can see in my very, very slow function, I make a for loop that goes to a very, very high number. So this will take a lot of time for my computer to process, right?
I think it might just optimize it a bit.
Huh?
I think it might just optimize it a bit.
Yeah,
Because it's not doing it.
I can like.
I don't know what to do. You can push something to the right.
Yeah. I know it's yeah, it's pretty fast. But let's see if it stays.
Yeah, you could tell me to use something.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah,
I don't know if it's,
this case is going to
I think if you set amount, set timeout, it has to be asynchronous, right? Because now we want it to not be asynchronous. We just want it to be something that something that just has to something that happens not asynchronous as we let's see. You have a button. Yes. There we go. It's very, very complicated. Yeah, but I can show you anyways. So I have a function, and in theory, I do a lot of things in this function, and it's really, really slow, right? So right now, I have two states again. I have my number, value, and then I have my second value. So at this point, I've just used set state within these parentheses. I've just added my value. In this case, it's this function that returns 1, right? Now, every time something happens on the state, this view, every time we do a re-render, it'll run my state again, right? Even though this value doesn't change, it will still run my use state again every time I do a re-render. So something you can also choose to do is you can pass a function to use state. Like this. So now use state doesn't have a value, it has a function that returns a value. And when we do this, it will only set this state the first time. It will only run our initial set state first time. And this is really good if you do a lot in your use state. So sometimes you might want to take some data and arrange it in a specific way and filter some data off. And this takes a lot of processing power. And in these instances, it's nice to be able to do your use state's initial setup as a function instead of just a value. So in that use case, you can use this, right? Yeah. So the difference was when I just set it like this, like a value. This is just a function that returns 1. So basically, we just do a value use state and set to 1, right? And when we do it like this, every time your view re-renders. So just before we talked about how every time something, a state or prop happens, changes, your React will do a re-render of your component, right? So every time your component re-renders, it will run this initial setup of your state again, right? So you see the reason that it's just done is because in the bottom of my function here, I did a console log. That's just done, which means that every time I do a re-render, it will get this value. And if it's just like use state to 1, right? It doesn't matter because it takes so little processing power, so we don't have to overdo it. But if it's something very slow, you can pass a function, and the function will only run the first time you do a render of your component. So now when I change my change the state and my component does a re-render, it'll not run through this initial setup. So you see there's no more duns now. It only does it in the beginning, and after this, it doesn't run my slow function ever again until I do like a completely refresh of this component. So if you have a very, very heavy function in here, it might be a good idea to pass it as a function, because then you'll only have to do it in the beginning of your component. You don't have to do it every single time that something changes within your component.
But anyway, the page is re-rendered, but the value is changed.
Yeah, the page will still re-render. I mean, the weirdest part is that if it's the value we change, this will still work perfectly fine, right? The only thing we don't have to do is to run this initial setup ever again when we pass it as a function. So you can still use your state just like you always do. The only thing you don't have to do is run this irritatingly slow function every time you do a re-render of a component. Yeah, so that's another way to use this use state.
So basically React remembers what was the initial value of use state, right? What you put in brackets. But JavaScript doesn't know that. So it's just going to execute whatever is in there. And because you put the function in the beginning, you put it just as a function call. JavaScript will be like, okay, I have to resolve the result of this function because React needs to know it for its use state. But React doesn't need to know it because they already saved it on the first render. So by giving React a new function, JavaScript won't have to execute it because it knows it's just passing the function. So passing the result of the function. Yes, it's basically like a callback. And then React remembers the result, so it only calls it one time. That's why.
It looks like cookies. If they will not execute certain. They save some information. It will,
Yeah,
it will enhance the execution of the code.
yeah, exactly. React has like a memory of what was the first value that you put into the use state.
So this is useful if you want to build faster and more responsive React Native apps, right? Because often we will process a lot of data within our components, and to only have to do this once instead of every single time you do a re-render will save you a lot of processing power. We also talked a bit about props and states as two different ways to have data within a component that we can react to, right? And I think last time, hopefully we made it clear, but just to make sure, the difference between a state and a prop is that a prop is single level only, right? No, a state is single level only. So this state value, I use it within my use state example component, and my parent component, which is app.jx, doesn't know anything about the state. So state is something you use when you only have a value that is important for this component. Whereas props is something that that your parent component knows about and can also change and make you react to. So let's add a prop. So it's just to make you 100% clear that state you use when you have need a single level value that your parent component doesn't know anything about, whereas props is something you pass down into the components under you, right? So it's just to make sure that you are totally clear on this, on how to use state and how to use prop. Yeah, I guess this would be a good time to just do some exercises and try to take what we learn and use it in practice. Yeah, so let's do this this exercise 1. Extend the counter exercise for how long? Yeah.
Could you send the link?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll just send the link now.
Need to change it. Need to change the permissions and then the link changes.
Yeah.
It's quite annoying. So we won't be able to edit.
Oh. Kan đi punk nữa. Oh, yeah. No?
Did you get? Yes, so it is the counter.
This one.
And then the counter is like, you can basically take the thing that is in the default read samples. Yeah, so when you set up your project, you got this page where you have a counter, right? You all know what to do. You all got the exercise. No,
Just go through. So was it the
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, this.
Yeah?
Expanding.
oh yeah, expand the counter.
Yeah, it is from the down. We just recycle it.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
didn't do it last week.
So, but I think there's already counter on the white page, right? So basically, for now, just add 2 new buttons. So one of them resets your count, and one of them makes like a double increment. So maybe, yeah, multiply by 2. Yeah. So if you have like 5, then you click this button, and all of a sudden it's 10, right? I guess that's what it's. The what? Sorry? No, it's a counter. Yeah. Yeah.
If
If-
you need to create about one reset count.
Yeah.
thousand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think I can even like. Yeah. When you make a new byte project, you have this counter, right? Yeah, and just make two new buttons. So one of them that resets it, sets it to 0, and one of them that doubles the value.
That's really.
I am. Oh shit!
Have a chance?
No, I thought at last. Yeah.
Did you find the charger? No, I think Anthony has the normal, but I don't know if it's the same one.
Can I move?
But maybe you should check the entrance.
Let's check the-
You think it maybe really? It's a standard plug. It's 1,000 different devices. It's risky.
Oh, like, you can check. It says it.
I didn't see what- Like, if you
No,
connect-
like there's different in the power. In
I
your
just don't think that-
Yeah, but I didn't. Yeah, good. You're not perfect.
You don't want to stay here, what?
Det er fandme vildt. Jeg har lige taget den er fuldstændig let, der kommer over. Jeg tror, jeg skal have lavet noget service på den. Hvor lang tid har det været? En time og et kvarter?
Jamen, det er jo fordi, du har Zoom.
Ah, makes sense.
Du har sindssygt.
Ja, ja.
Er det en Intel?
Ja, det er en Intel. Ja, ja. Jamen, det er vildt. Jamen, ja, den er også den er gammel, men jeg har lige fået...
Ja, men det er jo sådan...
Ja, jeg har også lige fået sådan en på min arbejde. Det er sådan noget med, at jeg kan sidde 2 dage uden at være op. Det er sindssygt.
I'm not sure. When I see the task. Yes, so the value that you have now thanks to. Yes. That's good. Right. Yeah. This is too many regions. Because this creates an infinite loop. Whenever you define the on-click, it calls this set count. Then it runs again. Then it goes back to calling this.
So that's why it should be, it should be just one day.
Same thing with the set state. That's why it works. This included the
I think it should be.
this is. Makes sense. Then to- Say, one. This will be. Essentially doing.
Function council. There is a lot of concepts. So it's closing bracket, so only the returns.
No, you really only want to
Just not here. Line 14.
choose whatever.
And you just try to delete everything between this. Yeah, just so. And then you just try to add your counter component. So with the arrow, and counter. And then, yes, and one thing that you have to make sure is that you have to make your component name with the first letter large. So I can just you have to the function counter with this. Yeah. And then we can just try to save it. Yeah. Try to spec. Yeah, this also needs to be a large C. And then you should import counter from yeah, it's the test counter. Try to close the right. Yeah.
When Julia's age, not the. Yes, she did. Yes, she. That looks like somebody that's interested.
I'm still waiting for the picture.
Oh, it's good. Oh. Don't say. It's like a year ago. You. Total. Where's that right about? Yeah, I cannot focus. The smallest noise distracts. I'm looking at yeah. Yeah, we got that our mile. So yeah, you know, we listen on the constant talk about I found out when we started. I didn't give it up and take note for our models. Yeah, because we didn't do it as if you want to look at all of the files like that, you first create a git ignore for your model. So it doesn't push all of the files and the data. So that's why. Yeah. Yeah. And you open usually because they didn't know my six. Work. Yeah. See my brain. You're over. Yeah. Yeah. No, Yes. There has a state. Also function is with these like distributed states, like a process. Yeah, two sets state. I would find. Probably. My leader provide. I haven't this is the wall that you can see. It was in trouble, but because I was there, I was present, so that's why. I haven't. They told us on before. I don't know what's going on. Could be worse. Also, instead of police, yeah. Actually, I'm going to plus.
All right. Are you guys somewhat there?
Yeah.
Finished? Yeah. Okay, so I just made a little example for you guys when I'm using UseEffect with an API, right? So I have this JSON placeholder API that just sends me some data. It can be a filter, it can be a list of users, and it can be a list of comments, right? It's just some random data. And I've made a filter state, which can be post, users, or comments. And whenever this filter changes, my UseEffect runs, and I fetch the data. And then when the data is fetched, I make it into JSON, and then I set this fetch data state to this array that I get, right? So as you see, when I switch between, you don't get any data here. It's just one. Yeah, but this should change, so it should be users. Nếu mà đây là đây là set fetch data JSON.
Sure, these API endpoints with /comments.
Yeah, it should. Yeah, it's coming, right? Ah, I know it's because I have two. This is two string. It's like this, right?
I think it's too sting.
I think it's because the data is, I was printing the title and it's yeah. So now it's just a list of objects, but who cares? What it does react to the filter, and then whenever the filter changes, it fetches this data from the API and then processes it and puts it in this state. So this is one of the ways we usually use effect, right? So that's just a little example with an API, and when you guys at some point you might have to use APIs, you can do it in an effect like this. So yeah, I can
It is common, but there are easier ways to do it. So if I will be allowed later, I can show you when we a bit faster. But this certainly works, as you can see. It's not inherently wrong.
but yeah, it's a way to use effect. A last thing that I didn't show you is I've showed you. By the way, I heard you guys talking about. I heard you guys talking about AIs at the beginning of the class when I came in, and I just got a new AI for my VS Code. So you can see it shows me what to write, right? Yeah, the future is now, guys. If you guys want to try it, it's called GitHub Copilot, and it is going to help you a lot. GitHub Copilot.
Yeah, that's right. It's an extension.
Yeah. But you have to. It's a paid. What do you call it? Like a paid program, but you can get like a 2-month free trial. So if you go to GitHub Copilot with your GitHub account, and you like get a trial for personal use, you can add it to your VS Code, and it will help you out with trying to suggest you code to write. You can also make like a comment saying like make a function that counts to 10 and so. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but
use the chat extension.
there's a chat
How do you
GPT.
know? I saw a YouTube video about it.
Is the chat GPT extension now?
I don't have the extension. Don't check my VS Code.
I don't.
Yeah.
I have another extension that I love, which is this. And now he's happy because there's no errors, right? But if I start making errors, it's gonna start being angry at me. This is called incredibly in your face.
I wonder what would the face look like if I make like 100 of those.
Yeah, I'll try.
I think he's gonna be crying on your video.
How do I make a new?
Pretty good to find errors. Does it say in which part, which line is it?
No, he's just angry at you.
Oh, yeah.
I'll show you what happens. 2 euros, 3 euros.
That's fine.
Let's see.
Oh. It's broken.
Oh. All right, but I showed you guys use effect with a value filter. It runs every time filter changes. Use effect without any values to react to, just runs every time your component re-renders. If you pass an empty array to a use effect, it will run. Yeah. And after that, it won't run. So only on your first render. So if you want to have something happen when your component mounts, that's usually what we call it, you just pass an empty array and it will only run as your component renders the first time, right? A bit of an edge case, but if you want some kind of cleanup on your component, you can actually return. See how cool AI is. You can actually make a return within your use effect, and then this will run once you exit your or close your component. So, but this is I haven't ever used it, but I know it exists. If you ever need to do some kind of cleanup on a component, this is how you do it. You just make a return within your use effect. So maybe you have to close the connection to a server or delete some keys, or
This is actually the thing where you would use effect most is subscribing to event listeners on the DOM. So you remember add event listener, like you don't need that here because you have one click. But sometimes you want to listen to some DOM events like resize, for example, scroll, something like that.
Yeah.
And unless it's like the app, the main component of your app, you really want to unsubscribe from these listeners in your cleanup, because otherwise you're going to introduce memory leaks where your component is gone, but you're still listening to all of these resize events and all of these scroll events.
Yeah.
So this is actually the main purpose of use effect, to subscribe to these external events. But people have found from the beginning of React, like when they have introduced hooks, which is not from the beginning of React, it's quite recent development. People have found so many ways to use effect that actually the documentation also carried it for a long time. Do it like this, for example, fetch data using use effect. But now if you look at the newer docs, they won't mention any of that, because people in the React development team have realized that maybe we shouldn't use effect for that, or maybe we shouldn't have people use effect for that, because we have different ways to handle it that are more efficient and less bug prone. Because yeah, well, it's not so much about crashing yet. It's more about making it easier to figure out where errors are in your app, for example. Because you know, I mean, you just said that the use effect just runs once, and you put the empty array. But actually React introduced a strict mode in development where it runs it twice, just to make sure that you're doing some cleanup, right? Just to make sure that you're aware. In rare cases, this can actually run 2 times. We're not guaranteeing anything. And we're not guaranteeing this is only run once. And maybe the browser is a bit slow, we're going to run it twice, right? So, so these are kind of the trade-offs that are sort of coming to the surface now that React is around for 8 years, 9 years, something like that. Where people figure out this is a better way to do it. And we're sort of polishing the interface.
All right, so I don't know if there's any of these exercises where they actually get to use effects. But maybe we should just do exercise 2. Yeah. All right, guys. Do you all have access to the what's it called, the Notion page? This page? Yeah, I think you sent the Notion page, right? Yeah. So now you guys can do exercise 2, which is render a list of books. So we sent you a code sandbox, and within this sandbox, there's just this list array with these book elements. So now we want you guys to take this and reactify it. So make your components, make your subcomponents, make your component tree. Go crazy with it. If you want to just render it, do that. If you want to style it out, like style it like hell, do that. But yeah, make a yeah. I saw you a lot of that you guys styled in your homework, which was cool to see. But yeah, you can style in CSS, right? So just stop me if I'm doing anything wrong. I suck at React styling.
And that's the easiest solution.
Yeah.
Write your CSS file, write your CSS.
Yeah, and you can like
import the CSS file. So you can also use style components, but that's a bit more advanced. It depends on the project, like what people prefer. And it's not really easy to say this is the most common one. Yeah, so one thing that I think you didn't do is call it class name.
where, sorry?
The problem is called class name.
This?
Yeah.
It's like class name that data or
No, and the prop name is class name instead of class. Because class is already reserved
class
for-
name. Yeah.
and the capital M. Have you figured this out when you add classes to your components? Nobody
So-
is listening.
Yeah. Take the books and go crazy. I think without giving too much away, I can already see that that there's like a book component, right? And then there's like an author's component. So maybe if that's how you choose to make it.
And when you're done, you can have lunch.
Oh yeah, lunch.
Yeah.
Only when it's
Oh, is it
no, I don't think so.
I think full service.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
labor market violation. You can't withhold the.
Fake slave.
Oh, nobody has been eating the eggs. They eat it with you. Do you want to do? Oh, yeah. Do you want to say like lunch ends here? And lunch ends at this time? No? No, no. No, because I was talking to Ahmed, like sometimes it like feels into too much time. Like you want to say like you have until
Yeah. Okay, guys. Let's all eat lunch now. And in half an hour we are back here and we are programming.
yes,
Yeah.
2:30.
2:30.
2:30.
Oh ja, vil du vise noget med den der SWR? Og måske også noget, altså jeg er super dårlig til styling, så må jeg gerne vise lidt, hvis du kan. Jeg er vant til style sheets i React Native.
You want style components, you don't. Yeah, want style components.
Nå. Alright. Jeg vidste ikke, hvordan style components ser ud i React.
Så bruger man de der template networks.
Ja, så det er sådan noget.
Du kan også bruge det i React. Det gør det faktisk også.
Jeg er vant til TypeScript.
Ja.
Ah, yes.
Oh, mention there is no cheating. There's no cheating. Oh, that's barbecue. Oh, there's no cheating. Yeah, there's no cheating.
You change the ID. What does it say? You also have this. I didn't match it. Are you sure that this ID exists in the reservation? Something with this is really wrong. You set up there.
And also I have the same problem with delay. This one, it works. So I'm that the answer, so it was created. And the other one, it's similar, just change the ID and change the name.
Red looks. Oh, this is still this.
Probably just sometimes with my extension.
Well, it just looks like you don't have these other collections. You don't have access to these other collections. The reservation of the.
Yes, but it was what was this reduced update,
Mhm.
like it's not better. So it was
So is this some sort of playground that you open? How do you? Like, I'm just trying to figure out what functionality you're using because I've never seen this before. How this works. Trying to find some documentation.
Mine are like
It says paper. So I think we're using this like. Okay, but it's kind of this middle of time. Then select the one. Select.
people in Zoom are watching you.
Yeah. You have to pay for that.
How everything is going? Did you get any progress?
Yeah.
About the incident. Yeah. What?
So now it says notified them. But we didn't want
No.
to. Oh, but. I think it is a.
Okay.
There's some issues.
Yes.
And they have like
Like remove the.
But also.
You're not alone. We can share.
Yeah, because usually I'm just click it and just choose like
So I
format
heard
or
that
Greece,
You like
and then
nothing.
like choose.
Yeah.
format
Yeah,
or
they
not,
were, they usually work.
and it's
Yeah,
automatically.
yeah, yeah.
She told me.
I'm going to, hopefully, I'm going to Argentina this summer for 5 weeks.
Nice.
Mm,
In December.
yeah. No, and summer, yeah,
Well, like, June, July.
yeah. All the way from the south, no, the north of the south.
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought it became the, what?
So, 10 weeks now.
How did it change that?
I don't know. This is already. We were supposed to go to Peru also. Of course, you know, it's a bit hard now. And then I think to begin with, Deborah, I was talking to Deborah. I think 3 weeks. It's a big country, you know.
It's huge, it's the size of Europe. So.
Yeah.
Just like I would say about you, like, when say, they told me what to do, then that's not it.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, I have a friend.
I like
She was speaking Spanish to me. We went to an entrance, and then she
So, also, when
went
you
to
use the items, so then
in relation to her students, so she has more treatments. So she. And then she stayed there 6 months.
No.
But it's the first time you go, right?
No.
And where are you going?
I think we're gonna start in Buenos Aires, and then we're gonna go to Salta.
It's not like
Maybe
this is red, so I mean,
between that, go to the waterfall.
No, this is
Right?
just
To Brazil.
Legiones.
Yeah. And then from Salta, we're just gonna travel down next to the border of Chile, so all the way down to
I don't know why.
south.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's my wife is visa. Yeah.
Playground thing?
It's not my wife is Nepali.
It's usually not that frustrating to work with mom. Because you don't have the right tools.
Yeah, but my wife is from, then his wife is from like from Kathmandu, close to Kathmandu, but my wife's from
I mean,
it's called Tarai.
it's like from the system.
What's the state called in the north of India? Massive state.
And you will be able
It's like close to India, so it was a very English. Yeah. But yeah, you need to do something like that. Let's see. Hopefully.
I didn't know that you had people need to
This
be.
is also the summer holiday.
Yeah. Deborah was also. I should be fine.
Yeah, I think it's easy to be.
Yeah. I don't know, but Nepali it's always really hard. I think it's the 9th worst passport in the world.
But if you're married, you can get from them.
No, she doesn't have the Danish passport. She has to like the Danish. What is it called? Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I got it for you. Okay. Maybe the thing is
Every day, whatever they said, every day, they are coming up with new rules. Today, we
No,
have
it's on.
10 rules. And tomorrow,
That's crazy. Yeah. Yeah, even for like Danish people trying to live will be or husbands still crazy. So if you find like a non-Filipino partner, it's almost like you're being thrown out of the own country. You don't have really high
I learned something with you.
really high pay and so on. We lived in Germany for a year. Then it was easier for us to live in Germany.
I'm not sure what you mean.
Yeah,
Library.
Reduce.
Well, you can also have a.
Redux.
Oh, Redux. No, I think Redux is it's a bit outdated. Because it's very difficult to set up and it doesn't provide that much value anymore.
So what people
Just plain React and state and contexts.
But when I say.
Yeah, I think we should talk about contexts. I haven't read all the lessons, but we should definitely talk about contexts. If it's not in there, I'm gonna add it.
yeah. I see. Yeah, very good. My wife, she's a nurse. She has a nursing degree in Nepal. And then when she came to Denmark, she wanted to work as a nurse. So she sent her papers to the Danish Agency of Health or something like that. And they wrote her like, oh yeah, we can see you have this education, but it's not good enough to, yeah, so she can't work as a nurse. And the worst part is like, there's a huge demand for nurses in Denmark. There's not enough nurses at all.
Make it easier.
Like this, what kind of prediction? Say that you will not value. And I will
Danish value for the university. Hmm. Yeah. 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 It's crazy.
Make it harder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
He was just education. You can live here.
Yes, no sense. This one is.
move this table right in front.
You should do that so you can see that, right?
Because the people will go to
Maybe bring your glasses. But I think you do understand languages, don't
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know, it's also, this is a very artificial way to work with MongoDB. Same way you also work with SQL in a very artificial way, because nobody sits there and writes these queries and then runs them and sees, oh, I got a list of results. Oh, nice.
Makes no sense.
You want to have user and the
Instead
data
of
to your
helping people,
database,
you can jump
return it to them, make it searchable.
try to push it down, and
And
people that don't have a
this you
chance
would
to
usually
go anywhere
do in
else,
code.
just create a
So you will
a
write
bunch of people. They have
a
nothing to do,
Node.js
they have
script
no, nothing to look forward to.
that queries your MongoDB.
Yeah.
It's not required for front-end job. But it would be, it could be like a plus if you know about it to sort of distinguish you from other applications. This is very filled.
Yeah, when my wife is for jobs, I help her with the CV, and instead of putting her last name, just mine, then it's easier, right?
So that's like you cannot put her
Yeah,
relationship with people, for example.
yeah. No, she can't have my last name. Because Nepali law is that you can change your last name to a Nepalese last name. So it's the same thing for then his wife. He also doesn't have his last name. It has to be like you can change your last name, but it has to be within the.
But how kids are going to have to say, they have to just.
No, but I guess people like are curious watching things and then see like Nielsen or
Yeah.
Peterson, I don't know, Danish. They put it in maybe, and then the others they go like, I guess.
First filter.
Because it's not because they send that they, yeah, but it's because people apply from other countries. So then it's easier to hire someone that is already in office than like bringing someone from Brazil, let's say. I don't know.
I heard there was in Amazon, you say they spend a lot of time looking through job applications, and it was super tiring. They used a lot of money to just have someone do applications. So they said, okay, let's try to make an AI, an artificial intelligence that just gets the application, and then depending on what we usually do when we hire, it will like set it to maybes or set it to no's. And they launched it for one day, and they had to take it back because all of a sudden no women were put in the maybe category. They were all just thrown out because they pretty much only hired men, right?
So they had to take it out.
No.
Yeah. Crazy. And it would be good if it was like anonymized, right?
Connection. That's how they say.
Yeah, I think the reason for the error is because it is always objects are very fast and visual system. Yeah, we talked about that, right? It's
It makes sense. It's like that.
yeah, because you have to site.
Yeah, because we want to help.
You try to console lock users. This all items. No, yeah, console lock sites.
Hang on, I will just go to the bathroom and then
Yeah, it looks nice. And you get it around, right? Try what you said. It's because okay. You don't use the use state.
But it's something that the whole world like works like right. If you don't have the right song, then it's not.
Yeah, that's one of those early like looking for how this must be so technical, right?
Yeah. You should.
Yeah. Yeah, so yeah, you can start making a component called books,
But it's.
where you use you have all of these, and then you can use make the book item. The office.
Hey.
No, I'm one done.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, that's good.
When I did live, I didn't know anything here. So, yeah, so it was like kind of my rights. And then suddenly I was doing the other side of the route. Yes, and actually it was a no, because he had to do And also the like first time. So, you know, like, am I going? There's so much more. It's more. It's like. Oh my God.
Should we always
No, not the React, I'm just React. Yeah, the DOM is just on the.
Yes. I imagine doing this the whole scene. My grandma also, but they made me that. I think the world, I'm like, yeah, well. My grandma has like. Yeah, so she was so intense because she never like traveled back. So she was like, oh no. Like, because she took like 1 month in all when she came. She didn't know like if she was going to arrive or not because it was too late. But now it's like, I'm nice. Can you learn, you know? Everything's Wait, what do you mean? Let's say then I decided that I want so that's what we did basically. If they were saying no, and you said yes.
Oi, you're late, honey. Sing. Hi.
And the says.
Yeah, you were already on the flight. Basically. You did a nice I think
No, we'll let this. Misschien. Bro, ik vraag. Hoe goed en vraag, hè? Zo. Dus dit is het. Misschien dat was met de beste stelling. Ja, jag kommer i storfinna. I live like a so police. Det kontrakt med det. Believer. Måske de kommer ned til 24 level. Men jeg det med jødekaos og på de der premium.
Det er så tæt glas.
Det er sjovt. Det er helt sikkert.
Glas? Ja, altså, what? Nej, ikke.
Har du ikke meget chokolade?
Still bare sådan ost og sådan.
Hey, you guys are European. You are European. Do you Easter? Yeah. Do you guys go? Yeah, but do you guys go and eggs that have come out of?
10
Yeah, not You have nothing in for Yemen, like take your children to the park and they put eggs like that there, so they look for them, they find them, they tell the story with the rabbit. Oh, that's it would be so cute if there was a rabbit that would lay eggs. What?
Det sker altid, når man har fortræde.
Ja. I believe so. But hey, even you gotta pretend that Islam, they're the same one. You look at they're the same version. You know, Muslims, they don't believe in Jesus.
Jamen, de har fået den der buks. Ja. Jeg kan være, lige skal sige det igen.
You guys are Orthodox, right?
And yes,
You know, I have a good knowledge about the and Catholic, but I think the only difference between you is like you say that Mary was holy as well, right? I live in a Bible school, and every single day they will come out at 7 in the morning. They were like this open. I couldn't open it. And what I told my teacher, you guys force us so much that most of the students came out as atheists. But yeah, you know, my mother, she's Christian. My father is Christian. So growing up, I have been pushed and told so much that you have no idea.
And I couldn't
I have such a cultural shock in my life.
not see this file.
I'm thinking about it.
You can see that you have 66 or 6,000.
My father's side family don't like teaching about
I think it's from the
my mother's side family teaching about Christianity and all of this. And yeah, I was like, can I follow both of them? I don't want to break my mother's heart and not the father's side family either. So I wasn't like stuck in between. I respect and love both of them. I obey and disobey both of them equally. So I'm like in the middle. I don't know, it's not good to stay in the middle.
I'm not on this branch.
You don't understand
You
me
haven't committed on this.
because you're not me. It's a psychological war in my head.
This one is changing, so like.
Never
Okay, I
marry
would like
a
to
Muslim.
get
The child would suffer like this. They're protesting.
And this one.
They're protesting. My mother, she's protesting.
Yeah. So you say.
My mother, she's protesting.
Scroll up. You should see them. You're on the stage.
If I tell you that I have been baptized and I have done
Which one is
Islamic
the,
way,
you want to say?
like in Islamic way, they say Allah Akbar on the ear. They have done that and they have baptized me as well. How does that work? Can you tell me? Like, my family wanted to keep it equal.
And then you
And then I just and push.
Like I have 3 layers of protection.
It probably does, but I have no idea how. Because I never
I'm
used to.
hunted by both people. Like she can't
Okay, but that's because
I was
the
in
file
the
is
original
a weird name.
Yeah, you have to make like a map
I
like
couldn't
this.
say I was like,
You have to put it within
what are you
like
asking?
like dips or just easy,
Like
just around. First of all, around all of this, and then like the square.
Because you have
like
studies
this, no?
special characters to escape.
And then one is bottom.
Use the UI, it's so much easier. And the command. Yeah, I mean, if you like that, sure, do that. But if it causes you problems, use the UI. It's so much easier.
Just delete this one. And then the this goes to map, you have to put it within, we call this.
Was een liste waar the thing about it, the was on purpose. So did you so you're not so you post it?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Ja, das ist so ein Jäger. Ich gehe, hey, kann man So, I think no, you want to say
Who's the finger? Who's the finger?
Yeah, sorry.
So it wasn't that hard.
Yes, I'm not trying to say.
I could see them. Society was giving me. I learned from the society. I love it. I like to and my grandfather, my mother's mother.
you can find yeah, that's actually
Yeah, no good for like there is a good fine. Try to go into your app to tier 6.
It's like
yeah. This is a good task to do from
Yeah, and add like this in your return. It's not a comparable scenario. So you have to pass the books as a prop to your books item. Yeah. And then in the books item you make a prop. After the name, you make books equal just like more it goes wide.
Oh yeah. That's what. Yeah, you know why?
First, just make it books item, and then you
In time, when access attack shut down to the immediate so right now they're angry so they created their own life. But that's why my grandmother, she said, I speak for this cross. There is no language for religion.
I know where I. Yeah, just delete this.
Yeah,
Yeah. Now let's see.
Well, I think necessarily they start treating us like us. So that happens like you're made of one like F1 and multiply by 2.
Well, no, you have to react to this item. This is a single item, right? So instead of books, this is when you get
Yeah, but the good thing for me is right now,
Another one. With the same count.
I mean, the both.
With this one.
Yeah, so think about your kid. Yeah, but Christianity says you're not allowed to marry. It's just remote some of it. Sure, you know, actually, there's no ayat. There's no ayat about there is a hadith that says
how did we express I think this is this URL is like a list, right? So here.
Yeah, so you can take the books.
Yeah.
And so
this is
then
the-
you render them.
This is the name.
And then all of these running.
Sign.
Some nice
Oh, yeah.
title components.
Maybe I will.
yeah, but it doesn't make sense.
And then the Facebook.
So who is
Yeah.
So yeah, inside your map, you have to turn this. So yeah, so inside the map you have to return something. Yeah, because you can also do something like voids. You don't have to return something.
You're healthy, related, you're high.
Maybe on the publisher. I think some of them have two publishers. Yeah. No, also sorry. So maybe for offer you can make like another component or just do a map inside here. Yeah, sometimes you have to.
No, it's not about that. No, no, that's not visual.
No.
No, you should do it in VS Code. You open another file for it. You name it.
Inside of
Yeah,
keys,
name it item something.
inside keys.
Yeah, yeah. Anywhere, it doesn't matter, but do it in the source. It's easier for me.
So back to-
How is it with the animation?
What do you think?
Oh, you know.
No.
Huh?
Yeah.
Men har de ikke allerede lært det? Ja, det er Node.js eller noget. Nej, det er meget.
Det var sådan et buzzword.
Ja, du bare se, ja, her snakker man om alt.
Alt er
Ja, men det skal jeg du snakker også om du snakker om men det siger du siger snakker okay, så det er også
okay.
okay, så det der to ja, men det er det der
2 uger
hvor er det kommet fra? Tingene op. Ja, okay, så jeg tror faktisk, at det er lidt klar om sidste uge måske. Men han hiver bare session, det sker til at snakke om det. Ja,
Så hvis det var mig, ja, det her kursus, så vil jeg nok skifte lidt med man kunne godt tænke sig at bruge sådan for eksempel Next.js her.
I think we copy paste. Or what makes the book item.
I have this
You have the.
this JS file with
But you can put it in your.
But how about
I just have like a single book, so just so this is my main app, and then I have my books where I map all the books and then make a single book item. That's what I'm trying to do at least.
So I think de har en gratis account til personlig brug, hvor
Why is it so?
Det kan man kan sådan set også lave det normale boilerplate noget og så videre. Så deploy det på det selv. Ideen med at kompliceret, fordi så skal man skrive en konfigurationsfil og så videre. Hvis man bare gør det med Next, så skriver man bare result push eller sådan noget, og så kører det. Så skal vi bare tænke over, om der er noget med at skrive det, der bliver sådan. Men det kommer altså lidt efter, for at det
Det er der. Ja, det er der. Jeg tror også, at Julia.
What? Just happened. Oh.
Okay, då, lad os lige snakke lige om. Men altså, jeg er klar, hvis det er... What have you done? Because yeah, but you shouldn't.
See how smart. Come on. Kom så. Det er sådan det, jeg har fået Copilot for en uge siden. Og mit arbejde nu, det er bare mig, der siger, kom så. Jeg gider ikke skrive noget selv nu. Ej, det ringer.
Jeg ikke har nogen snak om arbejde til kulturen der omkring, så det er bare
Vi gør det bare så meget som overhovedet muligt. Altså jeg sidder også og bruger ChatGPT, og det er fuldstændig lige meget. Altså så længe der er resultat, så der er ikke noget etisk overhovedet. Det er fuldstændig lige meget.
Er der ikke nogen bekymringer omkring data?
Altså vi deler jo ikke data med altså Copilot det er jo GitHub, så de har jo allerede alt vores source code. ChatGPT det er mere bare sådan noget ja, eller sådan noget, jeg sidder med noget, der hedder Elixir nu, og så kan der sige sådan nogle sindssygt lange algoritmer, så det er sådan, at jeg skriver den her Elixir-algoritme for mig. Men ellers er det bare, der er ikke nogen overvejelse, det er bare, så længe det er hurtigere, så kører vi bare. Ja. Det tænker jeg også, at det kommer til at ændre sig på et eller andet tidspunkt. Men lige nu er det jo bare nyt og spændende. Altså. Det er det også for os.
Personal AI.
Altså, jeg er jo jeg giver et fejlcheck her. Så skriver det godt. Jeg skal jo tænke hver eneste linje for altså, hvis det er noget kompliceret, og hvis det er noget, der ikke er kompliceret, hvorfor skriver det ikke? Hvorfor skriver det i forvejen? Kan jeg bruge en anden teknologi, der meget jeg skriver en sådan ting.
Ja, det er på den skeptisk.
Jeg er ikke skeptisk, men jeg synes bare ikke, at det løser problemet, jeg har.
Jeg tror også meget, det er... Altså vi sidder med... Hvad hedder det? Vi sidder og skriver i Ruby og sådan noget tit. Skal man skrive nogle fuldstændig åndssvage lange algoritmer, og der er det bare fedt sådan at have en, der sådan gætter sig frem til. Nogle gange, så er det også noget med, altså hvis jeg for eksempel skal ind og skrive sådan en eller anden database, modelfil, så tit så er det meget repetitivt, så er det sådan noget prop, username, prop, created at prop, og så kan du bare sidde og tabe dig igennem til sidst, fordi den fatter, hvad det er, du prøver at lave. Ja, ja, ja. Se, den kan godt lidt. Kan den? Det kunne det godt være, men det er det. Nå, men det er fordi, jeg har jo en...
Det er bare Wild West uden TypeScript.
Jeg er tit overrasket over, hvor meget jeg elsker TypeScript. Det er simpelthen bare genialt. Skal vi se? Yes. Tak, Copilot. Eller hvad? Måske ikke. Altså, det er, når den først sådan begynder at... The request module does not provide an export default. Ah. Ui. Office is not defined. Hvad hedder den?
Er der måske en, der ikke er noget?
Nej, jeg tror, det er det alle sammen her. Ja.
Nå, men det...
Nå, det har ikke et ID selvfølgelig.
Nej, jo, du har jo kun skrevet Office.
Det er selvfølgelig rigtigt. Det her det er også kun Copilot, det har ikke noget med mig at gøre. Den er når den først lige sådan begynder at fange, hvad man går og laver, så den fandme, den er vild. Skal man så ikke en Office på? Det var spændende.
Der mangler en return. Nej, okay. Det er kort.
Jeg synes, det er sådan
Kort.
Office. Jeg bruger ikke nogen list, synes jeg. Hvad er det?
Ja. See Office. Ja.
Vi burde...
det skulle hedde key.
Det
er jo godt der.
bare lave en...
Ja, det kan man godt, men det er faktisk ikke...
Er det ikke så
det er ikke
god
så
practice?
Ja.
Jeg kan bare se, hvor den...
Men ja. Er I virkelig på mailen eller noget?
Det er sjældent, der er nogen, der kigger efter om det er good eller bad practice. De kigger bare, om det virker.
Okay. Det er jo et interessant code review.
Each child on this should have unique key prop. Synes jeg lige, jeg ved den. Men... Så det så meget ikke ind i.
Det er jo før, altså det er jo heller ikke det system. Det er kun en warning.
Ja.
Så der er noget andet, der
Ah,
Men det behøver du jo ikke, fordi det er jo direkte som
jamen, burde det ikke være for each, hvis ikke jeg skal lave en return? Jeg synes lige, vi har nemlig lige, jeg lige fikset den.
men du har jo lavet en return i, at du har worket det i ikke curly braces, men
Ja.
normalt.
Jeg har altid bare troet det.
Ja, det er fordi, det er på den anden linje. Det er fordi,
Jeg synes bare altid, det plejer at være for each, så skal man ikke, behøver man ikke at lave noget. Det kan godt være, det er bare mig.
nej, det er fordi, svært at forklare. Det er fordi, der findes 100.000 forskellige muligheder at skrive en arrow-funktion.
Ja.
Og der er en mulighed, hvor du bare skriver
Jeg tænker, når jeg laver en return, så kan jeg også lave en console.log. Nå, det er fordi, han ikke har en .name, det er bare en author.
Ja.
Sådan, ja. Så vi se her, om ikke det ser rigtigt ud nu. Yes. Så fandme godt ud.
men det, altså hvis du skriver det sådan her, så er det stadig en return.
Ja. Ah,
Turnerer det her værdi direkte.
ja. Makes sense.
Publisher er stadig undefined.
Ellie. Nå ja, publisher undefined. Nej, men det er også fordi det er publisher. Ja. Det er Kamara. Ja. Det er lige før. Jeg tror ikke, det er ikke lige det, vi har valgt. Altså, det kan man også, man gør det med mål. Og så vil jeg også invitere til træning en gang om ugen.
Ja.
So here I will have this and then return one after. And this from slightly
Usually I would open
Should I give key here? Or should I give
but it's really easy.
So you had just showed me that you have one list
Just open a new file and import back.
but you have two.
It's good to convince you. You can also do it.
Why do we have two now?
Yeah.
I just give the box.
Yeah. But usually it gets quite solid become big file, right?
But it needs to be authors. So, here you can authors. And here you can. This one as well. That only leaves you with one place to put the key, right? So it answers both questions. Doesn't it?
Yeah.
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 Cool.
Okay, but
Yeah, yeah.
also with this here. books list
Mm.
and one book is one. And mark the books and which are the books.
Yeah.
There are in the right. In this case, should we give
You use the key that's closest to the. This component could be used outside of this. You need the key.
Yeah, if you want, you can start. I like my. Yes. Yes. Hello. Oh. Jeg begynder at få den der, hvad hedder det? Yes. 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 Jeg elsker Copilot. Jeg har været 10 gange bedre programmør. Det er fordi, det er, sådan, det er din Copilot, der sådan sidder lige og giver dig input, når du begynder at crashe imod træ eller sådan noget, ikke? Det er lige før. Der går ikke lang tid før, det er mig, der... Ja. Nej, det der...
You don't have to do it.
Starts to do another function. Const. Det er også fordi, det skal importeres, ikke? React. Startsheet, fordi det tror jeg ikke, det eksisterer, sådan set. Kan det ikke det? Jeg synes bare, det her stylesheet.create,
Reageeri veel nii, no eders, kuidas?
So it's called an instance file is declared this an object.
So const styles equals this.
So no, don't know.
Oh, die keegi.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
crazy. Book. Selline. Las see peab näha, silma. Yes. 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 Siia.
Style and yeah.
Dis is al, no, de vries gelezen zijn.
You just input file. You say input, and then the then you put all the dots slash. Let's see. It's not just thinking. We'll try it. It should work. So how far have you gotten your bookshelf? Not far. Everyone's looking at right photo of this. But it has to be put it there. Yeah, so why do you get this? Look at the data. So you to use what is
this is related. Okay. So you already made the program. So inside each program, you can render a list of objects. Instead of rendering like one list of objects. Here you could just so you have built objects, which you can pass into different objects. Correct, but you can just use it anywhere. You have to use the component where it's needed. And you can replace it. Der var to-tre ting mere, vi kunne nævne.
Ja, var det der med... Ja, vi kunne gøre det med... Hvad hedder det? Prop distracting
Ja,
og...
destructuring.
Destructuring. Og... Ja. Jeg tænker det ellers SVR.
Ja, og...
Måske bare måske.
Så er det med key. Altså, hvornår skal man have en key?
Ja. Mega.
Der mangler det den key, som det sidste.
Mega godt. Om 10 minutters tid eller sådan noget. Så kan jeg bare lige vise, altså sådan kort den her solution, så videre.
It looks like it's somewhat style.
It's missing some heading. So maybe it's just your brochure is too long.
I've had some padding.
It looks good.
Så ja, kig bare held. Så får du lov til at have din computer i.
Nej, jeg synes, det er lidt kompliceret.
Alright.
Det er sådan,
Du kan bare hapse den her.
ja. Jeg ved ikke, om det kommer til at fungere, men jeg prøver bare.
Ja. Ellers skal vi altid bare finde et eller andet codex-app eller online.
Ja, det er
Og snakke fra.
mere sådan en tastatur.
Nå, det er så...
Det er bruge dansk tastatur.
Nej, det her det er sådan en butterfly-tastatur.
Nå,
Jeg er begyndt at få den der error, hvor sådan, når jeg trykker E, så får jeg lige sådan 3 E'er eller sådan noget. Det er så fedt.
Har du en touchbar?
Ja. Jamen, jeg købte min Mac på den værste tidspunkt.
Ja.
Altså, så jeg har kun USB-C. Jeg har touchbar, butterfly keyboard. Den er ja 250 eller 256 gigabyte, så dengang jeg kørte en virtual machine på uni, der var nødt til at have sådan en ekstern harddisk, hvor jeg havde hele min Windows partition liggende på.
Det er jeg også faktisk.
Der gik, men det var lige inden de kom med den der 16, som hvor de sådan begyndte at backtrack lidt på. Ja, jeg købte også den store, det er også træt af, den er så skrumlet, når man skal ud og rejse med den. Sådan noget. Det er helt vildt. Jeg havde sådan min, før jeg fik min nye på arbejde, jeg havde sådan en MacBook Air, som bare sådan den, jeg havde den med ind til Nepal, hvor du kunne bare banke den ud af, ned i tasken og op, og lige lave lidt i bussen, og så fløj den op i modstander, fløj den ud af døren på bussen, og bare og overlevede. Det var sindssygt. Ja, så løb jeg bare ned og hentede min taske, og så... Ja. Virkelig fede.
Det er en dårlig forretning for Apple, fordi jeg kommer til at bruge den i 8 år igen. Det er som min sidste.
Mindre de har she moved there. Plan of
Efter 2 år.
One time she came,
Execute order, så går det bare.
supermarket.
Det er jo sagtens så.
Det var også det sidste år, men det gamle. Det var bare virkelig langsomt.
Alright, skal vi... Godt. Alright. How far are you guys in the exercise? Yeah. Maybe I've made an example. Maybe we can go through my list.
My journey, you know how far I am. I am burning actually.
Once it gets really hard, you'll start getting like bald areas.
I'm going bald because of React.
Try to get some inspiration here.
Yeah, maybe I can show you guys what I did, and yeah. So I made this nice page with my little AI friend. So in my app.jsx, I made a component called books that passes a list of books, which is a state I've made, so I can change it if I want to do that at some point. And I use this books list that you all got. I just put it in its own JavaScript file. In my books component, I take this prop, which I make some headlines, and I pass, take this prop and I map it so that each book within my array is rendered in a book item. And in my book item, I print all of my values on my title, my publisher, the year of the whatever book release. And for the authors, you can do it 2 ways. You can do like props.authors.map and then just like make a paragraph. Or if you want to go super like componenty, you can make a new component for the authors like I've done here, where I just map the authors and put them in a paragraph. If you guys want to make some styling, I think the best thing for you guys to do is just make like authors.css and just do your CSS styling. I did it with a style component, which looks like this, but it's just because that's what I'm used to doing it. It wouldn't be easy for you guys. So just make a authors.css or book item.css instead. So yeah, hopefully you guys are coming towards something similar to this. Yeah. Was it too fast? Yeah, I can see you guys are really good in CSS. Yeah.
Show how this library looks like the styles.
Yeah. I mean, this is my styles.
Yeah, but I mean like volume styles.
Yeah.
This is actually not styled components, but it's a styled component. It's not using the library styled components.
It's not the library.
That you use.
No, I'm just making like an style object. And yeah.
And it's like a big object.
Yeah, so this container has all of these styles. And then when I want to use this style object, I give my div a style and point it towards the style step container. Yeah. We just extract all the inline information to a separate file. The reason I like to do it like this is because I'm damaged because I'm a React Native programmer. In React Native, we have to do something similar to this. So that's why I like to do it. I'm sure you guys are way more comfortable with CSS, so just do that instead. So you guys want to continue with your book's assignment, or do you want to just do a bit more theory before we end the class? I don't know how tired you are, and if you can get information to your head at this time of the day. It's up to you guys.
What is the homework actually?
Homework is really to put some more buttons, like 8 and 8.
Oh,
Okay.
So we need to render. We have rendered it.
hmm.
Or maybe you can share.
Yeah, sure, I can. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I'll share this with you guys, and if you want to look at it, do. Maybe before we finish, you want to?
I can mention maybe 2 more things.
Yeah.
For today. It's an extra Easter egg. So one thing that could be quite interesting to you is, and I've already seen that you've used it, it's, what did we say? Destructuring, right?
Yeah.
It's called. I can never remember the name, but it's when you have an object like props. You know, props is always an object because you're going to have one or multiple props. You can destructure that object. So you can do, no, not that. No. Okay, this is going to be very funny because I have no idea how to make the curly braces on the Danish keyboard.
I didn't for the first year or so. I often went to Google and wrote curly brace symbol and copied it.
Why is it so ridiculously difficult? Okay, so instead of props, I can inline where where I want to use this. I can just make the curly braces and write books. Yeah, like it suggests. But then I won't have access to props anymore because props is not defined, right? So I have to remove all the props references. And you can also do that. You can also do that inline. So you can do consts and then do it like this, right? So what does that mean? Do you know what that means? Okay, how do I? Yeah. This is what I wanted, I think. It's fine.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
No.
As an object.
So this is basically the same as writing consts. Oops. Does that make sense?
We distracted.
And now we can
Destructure it.
Yeah, but I think this, no distracted. No,
Destructure it.
what? Yeah, but I was looking for another word.
Distracted.
Like we extracted. Extracted. Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we make React look within the props, find something called books, and then give us that update.
Yeah.
But it's really just a JavaScript feature, so you can use it outside React too. It's just a fancy way of writing. Okay, I want this books property from props, so I'm just going to put an object and write it like that, right? And you can even rename it if you want to. So you could say, I don't want this to be books. And you can do, I think you can do the same here, right? So you say colon, and then you say the new name that you want to give it. And now we're defining a const foobar that is equal to props.books.
And so if there's one object, there's two. Right?
Well, if there are, I mean, props is always going to be an object. If there are like,
Yeah, if there are many, if there are two, for example, props. Previous file.
so you mean if I not only have books, but I also have theme like this? Well, then I can just write theme and extract it as well. Does that make sense? Okay, I see some tired faces. I will just undo this.
But we saw you guys, some of you guys used it, instead of props, you used the destructure. So you have the curly brace and you said book theme within your function call, right? Which is a way to make it more visible to your co-developers. What do I need to make this component work, right? So it's a nice feature to have in your component for sure.
Can I still open this one?
Yeah.
Because you wanted to know how to simplify this, right? With the library. We can use SWR. It's not installed, so I'll need to install it. And this has reduced my screen space quite a lot. And so we need all of this boilerplate just to get a URL, right? And then if we use SWR, it's a bit. This Copilot is really talking into my talking into what I'm saying. A lot. It's spoiling all the stuff that I'm saying. Yeah. So use SWR is also just a hook. So let's fetch. Oh.
Just keep it separate.
Yeah, but I want the normal quotes. Okay, whatever. Take the non-normal quotes. Template literals. So what did we have? Posts, right? And then it has this data property that has is validating. Also has, yeah, well, I think.
It's loading, right?
I think it is validating. Well, it says any here because, yeah, well, we're not using TypeScript, so it's a bit hard to tell. but you can look in the documentation to find out. But basically, this replaces all of this, right? It might be necessary that we put fetch in here, but we're going to see. Maybe it works like this. Let's see. Save and okay, now I have no, okay. I have an error. See what's happening. Starsheet.create is not a function.
Just create
I will find the issue. Hang on. Probably this one, right?
yeah.
But where have we used? Did we use it? Here. Maybe I should fix it then. Okay, some more errors, as you can see. We're using the fetched data, but it's not there. So let's call this data now because we're using data from SWR. So what happens now? Still some issues. Checking on the method of app. What are you trying to tell me? Oh. We didn't use state. We did use oops, we did use state. I had to rename this because, yeah, because we call it like that. Maybe I'm not even using this file.
You might use state somewhere.
Effect example. We're using that, turning a div. Let's see, this is a classic debugging session, right? Let's see if it can render just a simple text. Yes, it can do that. Okay. So now let's go back to our use effect example, importing it from this file, which is not the right file. So this is why we can't import it, because we also created a JS file. So it wasn't sure about, should I pick the JS or the JSX? So I just picked the JS file and that was wrong. So let's see. Still getting some errors. Not read properties of undefined. And that's probably because data can now be undefined as long as it's loading. So what we want to do is we put validating, and you know the syntax, right? Like you put the question mark and then the colon. Generally, yeah, exactly. So when when it's validating with our API and we don't have any data yet, then we want to show the loading. Otherwise, we want to show the list. See if that works. No, of course not. Did it go to our API? So I think we're not using it right. Yeah, so usually you would use a fetcher. So let's just add, let's just say we're using fetch, see if that works. Oh, it briefly showed something, and then it's I know, but fetch is the browser tool that we want to use as a fetcher. So let's see if we do this. Let me just console log the data for now. I could have prepared this a tiny bit better. That would have been good. Okay, so we get actually a response as data. So what we want to do is we want to actually call fetch here. So this yeah, this looks pretty good, Copilot. This is what I was about to write. Yeah, I would maybe make it a bit more explicit. You can do it like this, or you can also use this, which I find even better. It's much easier to read, right? Hang on, there's something missing. Okay. So let's see what we get now. Yeah, I was just a bit shocked by. Oh no, it's a function. Okay. I don't remember this being so difficult. Oh. Yeah. Well, this is when you let Copilot, this happens when you let Copilot write your code, right? You have no idea what's going on. So it's supposed to be like this, and now it should tell me it's any. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know why this is selected. Not sure if I can unselect that. Or is that supposed to be like that? Okay. But you see, we don't need as much code. And it didn't work. No, it did work. Yeah, it did work. But the cool thing that we can do now is we can get rid of set state also. Well, partly. I guess we still needed to set the type of data you want to fetch, because now we can actually put the filter as a dependency. So when we have a filter, we want to go to the API and we want to this. And if we don't have a filter, we just pass null. So SWR knows that it can't reasonably get to the API because we don't really know what we want to get, right? If the filter is not set. Sorry?
The filter is just telling us which thing.
Yeah.
So the filter can be posts or users comments. And then depending on the filter, then we will push.
It's a custom state that we made, yeah. Okay, so let's see if this works. Yeah.
You guys see the loading. Now this is caching.
Yes. Yeah, it's quite nice because once you've loaded your data, it's there. It's only being refreshed in the background. So if you switch tabs and you come back later after a while, it's going to update automatically because that's how SWR works. So I would suggest to you, if whenever you can install this library and or a similar one, there's also React Query, and use that one instead of putting all the boilerplate in use effects. It's going to be much easier.
In the GitHub, it says that it's use SVR, return data, and error. The data is validating and error. So is validating where it's coming.
Also from SVR. So when you use SVR, you get an update, right? So what we're doing before this is deconstructing. Destructuring, right? So we're just pulling things from SWR. If you want to know all the things that you get returned from SWR, you can just go and read the documentation. There might be lots of other things.
There's actually TypeScript definitions here as well that allow you to just say control tab, control space, and it will then show you the options that you have. For example, I can also use is loading. I can also use mutate.
So it's like a moving, it's loading, it's validating. So
Yeah,
it's
it used to be called is validating. Now it's called is loading. So they kept both for a while. It tells you when the data is loading. And then you can also do something else if there's an error. You can show an error message. Okay, this is all. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't need use it.
And the homework, is that?
See you in 2 weeks.
Homework is somewhat clear, I hope.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with the to-do, right? Adding to-dos and deleting to-dos. Right?
Yeah,
I don't think you need any of those.
I think you can just use it with like the state and update state.
Yes, and I have a question. So here it's any new form. So how could I type some text and then add this stuff?
I think this is just like random items, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Add a random item, mark to do as done. If no items are there, show no items.
So just a real.
Yes.
Yeah, I see it.
But you can also make an input to make it dynamic if you want to. It's up to you.
Okay, class 24, before we leave, I want to check in what's going on with the study groups, with the mess. Are people still using them? No? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Study group with you. Yeah, so. With the
Okay, stop.
Node.js
Node.
stuff. What you're doing